the house with two altars. When family, Masonry, Eastern Star, and rootwork collide collective. Some families leave you grandma's cast iron skillet. Some leave you land. Some leave you jewelry nobody is allowed to sell. And some families leave you a sentence. Don't ask about that. Whew. Now that right there will make the eyebrows rise. Because whenever 3 generations of grown people suddenly develop selective amnesia around the same subject, baby, somebody has been sweeping something under a rug so long that rug got a mortgage. And lately, the collective has been asking a much darker question. Why do so many family stories involving Freemasons or Eastern Star members eventually wander into stories about strange deaths, rootwork, family curses, powders, buried objects, prayers spoken backward, inheritances, and relatives insisting that somebody in the family put something on somebody else? Listen carefully. We are not going to tell you that every Mason is practicing magic. That would be foolish. We're not going to tell you every Eastern Star chapter is secretly holding Curse Night after the bake sale. Please. Folks already have enough imagination without us putting premium gasoline in it. But we are going somewhere much more interesting, because the history underneath these stories is real. And what happened is more complicated than secret society equals witchcraft. Much more complicated. You have several traditions living beside one another, sometimes under the same roof. Freemasonry, Eastern Star, Church Christianity, African American folk spirituality, herbal medicine, conjure, hoodoo, rootwork, ancestor traditions, funeral societies, mutual aid networks, family hierarchies, and good old-fashioned family politics. And family politics will make Congress look organized. Now here comes the first key. Historically, Masonic organizations were not merely places where people wore ceremonial clothing and memorized symbolic lessons. They were networks, especially in communities where Black families had been denied access to mainstream institutions. Prince Hall Freemasonry became connected with education, civic activity, community organization, social standing, and mutual assistance. Then came organizations associated with the Masonic family, including the Order of the Eastern Star. And in Black America, Prince Hall affiliated Eastern Star organizations created spaces where women held authority, organized charitable work, strengthened communities, helped widows and orphans, and built powerful networks of mutual aid. That is documented history. So think about what that meant inside a family. Granddaddy might belong to the lodge. Grandmother might belong to Eastern Star. Uncle, somebody knows the undertaker. Aunt, somebody knows the church secretary. Cousin, somebody works downtown. Another cousin handles insurance. Another one knows everybody at the courthouse. Not because they are plotting anything, because before social media gave everybody 4,700 friends they have never met, communities actually built networks in rooms with chairs. Imagine that. Human beings physically knowing each other. Ancient technology. Now put another tradition inside that same Southern household. Rootwork. Conjure. Hoodoo. And here is where history gets spicy. Hoodoo was not created by Freemasonry. Eastern Star did not invent rootwork. They are not interchangeable traditions. But hoodoo and conjure were historically practiced among African Americans, particularly throughout the South, drawing from African spiritual traditions while absorbing Native American, European, biblical, and regional influences. Roots mattered, herbs mattered, dirt mattered, water mattered, scripture mattered, objects mattered, intent mattered. Some workings were believed to heal, some protected, some brought luck, some sought love, some were used for justice. And yes, historical practitioners also believed certain workings could harm another person. That belief is part of the documented tradition. Now hold on. There is a tremendous difference between saying people historically practiced spiritual harming rituals and saying that ritual medically caused this particular person's death. Those are not the same sentence. And Ahll is not about to sneak one sentence into the other wearing a fake mustache. If somebody died, we examine the death, cause, date, circumstances, medical history, death certificate, autopsy if one exists, toxicology, property, probate, insurance, police reports, witness statements, who benefited, who was present, what changed afterward. Because sometimes everybody is staring at a candle when they should have been staring at somebody's checking account. Now we are getting somewhere. Because the deepest story may not be whether a root possesses supernatural killing power. The deeper story may be why the family believed it did. Who taught them that? Who was feared? Who had the reputation? Who controlled information? Who controlled the money? Who decided which relatives were protected? Which relatives became scapegoats? Which deaths were discussed openly? And which deaths received the family classic, "We don't talk about that"? There it is again. That sentence. Now let us walk backward into 1826. A man named William Morgan threatened to reveal Masonic secrets. Then William Morgan disappeared. Never conclusively found. Never conclusively proven murdered. But enough suspicious activity surrounded his disappearance that America exploded. People accused Freemasons of protecting one another. People feared secret oaths were stronger than loyalty to the public. The outrage became so enormous that an entire political movement grew from it. The Anti-Masonic Party. That happened nearly 200 years ago. So when somebody today says, "Why do people associate Masonry with mysterious deaths?" Collective, that association did not come from TikTok. America has been arguing about that question since horses were the Uber drivers. But history requires discipline. Morgan's disappearance created suspicion. It did not prove that Freemasonry as an institution practices murder. That distinction matters. Now, Eastern Star adds another psychological layer. Stars, ceremonies, initiations, signs, passes, symbolism, biblical heroines, special clothing, private ritual. To somebody raised outside that world, it can look mystical. And humans have one particular intellectual weakness. If we do not understand a ritual, we upgrade it to sorcery. Grandma closes the curtains for a meeting and somebody 40 years later tells the grandchildren Grandma was teleporting. No, Grandma might have just been tired of nosy neighbors. Eastern Star's formal teachings describe themselves through biblical morality, charity, loyalty, faith, and service. That is what the institutional record says. So where does the darker family story come from? Sometimes from overlap. Imagine one woman. Sunday morning, she is in church. Tuesday evening, Eastern Star. At home, she keeps herbs her mother taught her to use. Her grandmother taught her to wash the doorstep a certain way. She keeps a Bible open to a particular psalm. She tells her daughter never to sweep somebody's feet. She knows what roots grow behind the house. She puts something under the mattress for protection. Now, 50 years later, descendants find the objects. They know she was Eastern Star. They know Granddaddy was Mason. They connect everything. Suddenly, the lodge taught Grandma hoodoo. Except maybe it didn't. Maybe Grandma had multiple spiritual and cultural inheritances at once. People do that. Human spirituality is messy. Always has been. The ancestors did not organize themselves according to bookstore shelving categories. Religion on aisle 4. Folklore on aisle 6. Herbs next to gardening. Everything lived together. Now we reach the dangerous part. Family deaths. Because death creates stories. Especially unexplained death, young death, sudden death. Several deaths clustered together. A person dies after arguing with a relative known for rootwork. Another dies years later. Someone remembers an old threat. Someone finds strange material near a doorway. Then the narrative begins assembling itself. He put something on him. She worked roots against her. The family has been doing this for generations. And once grief gets involved, coincidence begins wearing a detective badge. That does not mean the family is lying. It means memory, fear, spirituality, and unanswered questions have merged. But sometimes there really is something hidden. Just not necessarily supernatural. A family can hide abuse, poisoning, financial exploitation, violence, addiction, medical neglect, inheritance disputes, insurance motives, domestic coercion, criminal activity. And here is the wicked little twist nobody wants to discuss. Sometimes supernatural explanations can accidentally protect ordinary wrongdoing. Everybody is looking for hexes while nobody requests Grandma's medical records. Everybody is worried about graveyard dirt while cousin Sticky Fingers just became beneficiary of 3 insurance policies. Sir, put the candle down. Bring me the paperwork. That is how Ahll investigates darkness. We respect spiritual traditions without allowing spirituality to erase evidence. We respect ancestors without pretending every ancestral claim is automatically factual. And we respect the dead enough to ask what actually happened to them. Because there may be families where Masonry appears in the genealogy, Eastern Star appears, rootwork appears, Deaths appear, feuds appear, and secrets appear. But those pieces must be investigated separately before anybody draws a line connecting them. Otherwise, we are not uncovering hidden history. We are manufacturing it. And baby, the world already has a warehouse full of manufactured history. What interests me most is not the cheap question, were they witches? Too easy. The stronger question is, what kind of power operated inside the family? Who possessed knowledge? Who controlled resources? Who belonged to organizations outsiders could not enter? Who understood herbs? Who handled funerals? Who managed estates? Who knew the passwords, rituals, and family history? Who could make one telephone call and have half the community respond? And who was frightened enough that nobody challenged them? Because power does not require magic to feel magical to somebody who has none. That is the door we are opening. Not accusation, investigation, not superstition dressed as certainty. History, folklore, power, family, grief, secrecy, money, spiritual practice, and evidence. We are going into the old Southern houses, the lodge records, the Eastern Star histories, the conjure traditions, the funeral networks, the inheritance battles, the family stories nobody was supposed to repeat. And when a story claims somebody died because roots were put on them, we are going to examine both worlds, what the tradition believed happened and what the evidence says happened. Because wisdom does not fear mystery. Wisdom simply refuses to let mystery impersonate proof. And that distinction? That is where the deepest story begins. It's Ahll.
To every soul who made it to the end of this scroll, congratulations. You didn't just watch another video. You trained your attention, exercised your discernment, and invested in the one treasure no one can steal from you: wisdom. Graduation isn't receiving all the answers. It's finally learning how to ask better questions. If today's scroll sparked a thought, healed a wound, challenged an old belief, or simply reminded you that you're not walking this path alone, then pass the lantern forward. Someone out there is still searching in the dark, and your share might be the light they were praying for. Join the collective by subscribing and turn on your notifications so you're there when the next scroll or codex is unveiled. Time has a funny habit of delivering the lesson right when it's needed. The algorithm is simply humanity's latest attempt to organize chaos. Sometimes it even succeeds. Until we gather again, keep your heart soft, your mind sharp, your spirit grounded, and your discernment polished. Question with courage, learn with humility, lead with compassion, walk in wisdom, walk in love. We'll meet you in the next scroll. Ahll.
Until next time, your Sea Star Curacy, channeled by 3611027, the Beautiful Whisperer. Our Sea Star Devalan CO. Apply the news you can use.
You don't even have to say nothing. I already know. I know.